Herkese merhaba. Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to the ISSUP Türkiye launch event and today's session on gaming and gaming disorder beyond the obvious. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Serhat Yildirim, a proud member of Addiction Psychiatry Foundation of Turkey and manager at ISSUP Türkiye. While we are waiting for a few more to join us, I'll begin by saying a little about ISSUP, the International Society of Substance Use Professionals. ISSUP is a membership organization for the global substance use workforce with over 35,000 members worldwide. It is an international network that unites, connects, and shares knowledge across the substance use prevention, harm reduction, treatment and recovery support workforce. ISSUP's global mission is to make the work of members as impactful, accessible, and effective as possible. They do this by making it easier to discover and share evidence-based knowledge, best practice, training, and networking opportunities. Well, today is a very important milestone for our foundation. Our connection with the ISSUP family goes back in time, but finally, today, it's official. We are formally launching ISSUP Türkiye National Chapter. It's an honor for us to be a part of this huge network. Luckily, we have some esteemed guests and speakers with us, sharing our excitement today. Joanna Fitzpatrick, Travis Roberts from ISSUP Global, Kirsty Fitzpatrick, ISSUP Global, Dr. Yatan Pal Singh Balhara from AIMS New Delhi. I'm sure we'll hear important remarks from all of them. Please keep in mind that you will have the opportunity to submit text questions to our presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane on the webinar interface on your screen. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We'll collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. And if you have not done so already, please head over to our website, issup.net, where you will find information on how to sign up for free membership. Our website also has a wealth of resources and publications for you to enjoy. You can also watch recordings of past webinars and see future events listings. And this webinar is no exception. It will be accessible online later. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the ISSUP staff and our interpretation team for providing technical support for this event. Okay, now I'd like to present our first speaker today, Dr. Rabia, Bilici. She's a leading academic in the drug demand reduction field in Turkey. After founding the Alcohol and Drug Addiction Research, Treatment and Education Center at rkiye Mental Health and Neurological Diseases Hospital in 2012, she was the head of the Department of Addiction Psychiatry during her tenure. Along with holding various positions within the field, Dr. Bilici led the transition process from Addiction Psychiatry Association to Addiction Psychiatry Foundation of Turkey, of which she is the president. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to leave the floor to Dr. Rabia Bilici, the director of ISSUP Türkiye.
Thank you, Serhat. Hello, everyone. As Serhat said, today is a special day, not only for me and my teammates, but also for all my colleagues working in the field of addiction in our country. Up to date, there have been many studies and efforts in this field in our country. Similar processes continue all over the world, we know, and we believe that we can make a difference with strong collaborations and sharing knowledge and experience. So today, we are officially joining the ISSUP family, which is a global network of professionals dedicated to address the complex problem of addiction. And the journey of becoming a part of this precious family required a process, sure. The ISSUP family has welcomed us from the very beginning and has been a source of support, encouragement, and guidance, standing by us every step of the way. I would like to take this moment to express my gratitude to the entire ISSUP family, especially Joanna Travis and Kirsty Fitzpatrick, and also the INL family, Bill McGlynn, Brian Morales. Your commitment to excellence, passion for making a difference, and spirit of collaboration inspire us to reach greater heights and continue our efforts to fight addiction. I would also like to thank Professor Yatan Pal Singh Balhara. We met him at a 10 days online UTC training of trainers. His eagerness to impart knowledge, his willingness to share his experience, and his genuine kindness, and his style of mentorship has resonated with all of us to make a positive impact in our work. In my presentation, I will have 3 parts. First, I would like to give brief information about our country, Turkey. In the second part, I'll highlight the ongoing implementations in the field of addiction. And at the end, I'll introduce you Addiction Psychiatry Foundation of Turkey, which is responsible for ISSUP Türkiye chapter. Yes. As you see in the slide, Turkey holds a significant geopolitical position, serving as a bridge that connects Asia and Europe. Through its history, Turkey has been a land that has hosted many civilizations for thousands of years without interruption. Göbekli Tepe, often referred to as the 0 point of the history, stands as a testament to the deep historical roots of this land. The Republic of Turkey was founded in 1923 by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. And the national flag of Turkey features a red background with a white crescent and star symbolizing the sacrifices made by soldiers during Turkish War of Independence. And Turkey is known for hosting the largest refugee population in the world, with many refugees living outside of the camps. Most of you know Istanbul. Istanbul is the city where I reside, holds a special place in terms of its geographical and historical significance. With a population of nearly 18 million, Istanbul is a vibrant and diverse city that boasts a rich history and cultural heritage. Istanbul is home to many iconic historical sites, including Basilica Cistern, Maiden Tower, Galata Tower, and Hagia Sophia, each representing different periods of history. Turkey's Aegean and Mediterranean coasts are renowned for their stunning beaches and attracting visitors from around the world. And if you are interested in visiting this beautiful country and indulging in its delicious cuisine, including kebabs, döner, baklava, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We look forward to sharing the warmth and hospitality of Turkey with you. And that was a brief information about Turkey, and let's move to the second part of my presentation. I'll try to tell about ongoing implementations in the addiction field. We have a council consisted of 11 ministries, which is named High Council of Fight Against Addiction. And the chair of this council is Vice President. It facilitates applying new strategies and policies quickly. This council monitors the anti-drug emergency action plan of Turkey. You can see the components of drug demand reduction strategies. When we look at the prevention part, in our country, the main institutions for prevention are Ministry of National Education and Green Crescent. They have a common program called Turkey's Anti-Drug Basic Awareness Module. There is a regular training which covers anti-drug strategies, including tobacco and alcohol. And also, this training is based on education for a healthy life. One of the other important primary prevention program is the Green Crescent Living Skills Educational Program. It's a regular school-based program. It aims to help students to gain skills for protecting themselves from risky circumstances and also help them to improve their positive behaviors and habits. And the school addiction intervention program, it is Turkey's first and only school-based intervention program. It was developed with a secondary prevention perspective for students about their tobacco, alcohol, substance, and risky internet use. One of the most important counseling services is anti-drug consultation and support call center. It is organized by Ministry of Health. It is free and you can call it anonymously. There are trained staff there. People who wish to receive treatment for their substance use disorders will be directed to a family physician or to a psychiatric clinic or an inpatient or outpatient addiction treatment center. Another most common counseling service is provided by Green Crescent. We call it YEDAM. The trained professionals provide consultation and support services to clients in person or via phone or internet. As you see, prevention studies are mostly focused on school-based prevention programs. I can say that we need to improve ourselves on family-based, community-based, workplace-based, or media-based interventions also. When we move on the treatment part, in Turkey, here are almost 140 detoxification centers. The average duration of stay is 21 days in these clinics. They mostly include detoxification and psychoeducation programs. Most of them are hospital-based, and inpatient clinics are usually located in the campus of mental health hospitals. We also have community-based treatment centers. They are located in the community. They work with case management system. They do not have any term about addiction on their signboards. So the patients who do not want to be stigmatized usually prefer these centers. And addiction rehabilitation is a relatively a new concept for our country. It is developing year by year. We have inpatient and outpatient rehabilitation centers for both adults and adolescents. This is one of the outpatient rehabilitation center within one of our hospitals. It works as a daycare hospital. And this is an example of inpatient rehabilitation center for adolescents. The adolescents can stay here up to 6 months. And this is our country's first rehabilitation center for pregnant women with substance use disorder. Duration of stay is up to 2 years here. Women can keep their other children with them if they are the children are less than 6 years. And there is a multidisciplinary approach, including obstetric, gynecological care, and postnatal care. However, I can say that we have to work more on women with substance use disorders in our country. And in Turkey, all of the services about health, including addiction counseling, detoxification, and rehabilitation, are free for all citizens and also free for the immigrants. And we try to follow international standards for treatment settings. We could only apply our national standards defined by Ministry of Health up to now. Our national standards include physical conditions of treatment settings, staff properties and their responsibilities, licensing of treatment settings, and structure of scientific advisory board. I believe that it will be great if we also follow up and implement international standards in addiction field. And the last part of my presentation is about Addiction Psychiatry Foundation of Turkey. Addiction Psychiatry Foundation of Turkey, it was formerly known as the Addiction Psychiatry Association, and it was established in 2002 by esteemed professors dedicated to the field of addiction psychiatry. Very recently, the organization has transitioned into a foundation, reflecting its commitment to advancing the field of addiction psychiatry in Turkey. Comprised of over 100 psychiatrists specializing in addiction, the foundation serves as a hub for professionals working in this critical area of mental health. And through its collective expertise and dedication, the Addiction Psychiatry Foundation of Turkey aims to promote research, training, and advocacy in the field of addiction psychiatry. As a newly formed organization, the foundation is poised to make a significant impact in the field of addiction psychiatry by fostering collaboration, innovation, and best practices. The foundation seeks to enhance the quality of care and support available to individuals struggling with addiction in Turkey. The Addiction Psychiatry Foundation of Turkey is committed to upholding the highest standards of professionalism, ethics, and compassion in its work. Considering all these aims, we believe that international collaborations will lead us to achieve our goals. And I would like to repeat again that we are delighted to be a part of ISSUP family and look forward to the learning, growth, and collaboration opportunities that lie ahead. We also have collaborations with ISAM and ICU-DDR. And what you see in this photo who you see in this photo are the members of our team who meet regularly every week. Of course, we are a much larger family than it seems here. On this occasion, I would like to express my gratitude to all my teammates, especially our young friends as Serhat. They truly are the future of addiction science, and I know that they will carry this struggle much further. And also, we are waiting for you all at the ISAM Global Congress, which will be held in September in Istanbul. And from now, we are also in the ISSUP family, and we hope to contact you more often. Thank you very much for your support. Yes, Serhat, that's all.
Thank you, Dr. Rabia. Now I'd like to present our next speaker, Bill McGlynn, for his welcoming remarks. Briefly, Bill McGlynn is a senior advisor to the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, INL in short. He has helped develop and implement international drug treatment and prevention programs in Africa, Asia, and Latin America since 2013. Bill served as Deputy U.S. Permanent Representative to the Organization of American States, OAS. From 2008 to 2011, he was Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of INL. Along with various positions with the Department of State, he also served in the U.S. embassies to Haiti, Gabon, the European Union, and Austria. Thank you, Bill, for being with us today, and now the floor is yours.
Dr. Serhat Yildirim, thank you very much. I really want to express some special congratulations to you and to Dr. Rabia Bilici. for your work and your colleagues in establishing the Türkiye National Chapter of ISSUP. I know it was a lot of work, and you have really brought Turkey's excellent experience and the breadth of activities that you already engage in to the organization. It's very clear from Dr. Bilici's presentation that we will all learn a lot, and you have been very successful in addressing substance use disorder and other problems. I think you personally, Dr. Serhat, did a great job explaining what the International Society of Substance Use Professionals offers, and particularly the national chapters. It's been a very successful area, and I not only congratulate you for establishing the Türkiye chapter, but the ISSUP global team, Joanna, Kirsty, and others, Livia Ediger, who work so hard to break this such a vibrant, important network. As you mentioned, Dr. Serhat, the resources that I think ISSUP has together with all the countries that are part of it are crucial, are very just so great. And the thing for me is, having engaged with many programs of treatment and prevention and recovery, the thing I find is that the person in the field, the dedicated person often working with very limited resources, having a home, the ISSUP home for training, collaboration, information is just so vital. And I have no doubt that this is going to be, the Türkiye chapter is a very important one that we're just delighted is going to be part of it. And I think the kind of collaboration that you are engaged in is already evident by this webinar, where Dr. Singh Balhara, who is we've gotten to know very well as a prominent member of the Global Coalition to Address the Threat of Synthetic Drugs, has educated us and provided leadership in a key area of that. So again, let me just conclude by saying congratulations to you all who have engaged in making the Türkiye chapter a reality, and we very much look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Mr. McGlynn, thank you for your encouraging words. We are very honored to hear your support, and thank you once again being with us today. So next, we'll hear from Joanna Travis-Roberts. Joanna is the Chief Executive of ISSUP. She has worked in the substance use disorders field since 2001 in a variety of capacities. Her educational background is around literature and languages, with a postgraduate specialism in marketing. Her professional life has encompassed a wide range of responsibilities around research, communications, event management, and leadership. Joanna, we are very happy to be here with you today, and please feel free to have the floor. It's yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serhat, and it really is wonderful to be here. Such a privilege always to be part of these fantastic celebrations and events to launch a national chapter. And today we're here, obviously, to celebrate ISSUP Türkiye, so it's fantastic. And I just want to start by passing on all of the good wishes from the ISSUP team, from Livia, our Deputy Director. Kirsty's here, so she's going to talk to you all shortly. But all of the global team is really excited to have you on board, and it's really fantastic. You've already talked a little bit about ISSUP and how we want to really connect, unite, and provide knowledge to the workforce. And we have almost 37,000 members now around the world, so it's really fantastic to see the development in new countries and how we can expand in those areas. I think it's always worth mentioning when we talk about who we are and what we want to do, that when we say professionals or workforce or community, we mean absolutely everyone who is contributing to that field. And it may be a family member, a volunteer, somebody working in education, law enforcement, medical, social research. I can't list them all, but it's so important that we recognise the different parts that everybody plays in this essential work, and ISSUP really wants to provide some form of support to all of those people. I think it's also worth noting to the audience of the webinar, as well as yourselves at ISSUP Turkey, how much we appreciate how tirelessly this community work, how dedicated they are, how essential they are, and what a difference they're making day in, day out. We really salute the work that everybody is doing and hope that we can support it and just make sure that we keep having that impact as much as we can. A little bit about ISSUP in terms of how we work. We work online with our national chapters and with our events. And the national chapters are so essential to us as a channel to be able to deliver ISSUP's mission according to the needs of the people in that country. And it's just so fantastic when we see that countries and organisations like yourselves want to work with us and have that collaboration. We're all about collaboration. So it's fantastic to have such positive and willing partners to be part of our national chapter family. I really want to thank you at ISSUP Türkiye for all of the work that you've done to get us to this point, and we can see the potential of all the work that you can do and all of the achievements that are ahead. To thank everybody that's on the webinar listening, and to all of the ISSUP members in Turkey that we hope we see, you know, expand and reinforce that collaboration there. We're looking forward to working together, to seeing you at our event in Thessaloniki, which I think is just worth mentioning to anyone listening. It's happening the 26th to the 28th of June in Thessaloniki in Greece. It's a free event. There's lots of things happening, conference, trainings, workshops. So it's a great way to be together in person. So we're looking forward to seeing all of our national chapters and our ISSUP, a lot of our ISSUP members there. And we want to say thank you, good luck for the future, and we're really looking forward to working together with you to really strengthen the efforts of every individual working in this field. Welcome to the ISSUP family.
Joanna, thank you for your kind words, and we are also looking forward to seeing you in Greece soon. Okay, so I would like to continue with Kirsty Fitzpatrick from ISSUP Global. Kirsty joined ISSUP in 2019 and is a national chapters coordinator, mainly focusing on the Europe and Middle Eastern region. Kirsty has a background in project management, marketing, and business development, and has spent much of her career in the corporate sector before moving into the charity or NGO sector in 2014. But before leaving the floor to her, I would like to squeeze in a special thank you note for her, because Kirsty has been very, very supportive from the day one, from the beginning, and helped us a lot to reach to this official launch event. Kirsty, thank you once again for your continuous support, and now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Serhat. That was really nice of you to say that, so thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity just to say a few short words to formally welcome ISSUP Turkey to the National Chapter family. Family has been a strong word already throughout this session. Yeah, I've been working with closely with the ISSUP Turkey team for around 2 years now. I can't believe it's been so long. And I know they've been working very, very hard to get to this point. I'd like to think we've built a great relationship, and I'm very proud to be your national chapter coordinator, I have to say. So I'm delighted to be part of today's launch, and I have no doubt that the team will be a great asset to ISSUP. We already have many exciting activities planned, and we will keep you posted via our social media and website. So mine is short and sweet, but I just wanted to say thank you to Rabia, thank you to Serhat and the wider ISSUP Turkey team. I know there's a big group of you who work in the background, for all your tremendous work you've done so far. And I sincerely wish you all the luck in the world and the very best for the coming months and years ahead. I think we've got lots of exciting things to look forward to. So thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. After completing the welcoming remarks, I'm sure there are many of you who are excited to hear Dr. Yatan Pal Singh Balhara. He's our next speaker. Probably many of you already know him, but please let me briefly introduce him to you. Dr. Yatan is a professor of psychiatry at New Delhi AIMS Institute in India. He runs the dual diagnosis clinic and behavioral addictions clinic over there. But he's also serving as the Secretary General of the World Association on Dual Disorders. Dr. Balhara offers consultancy to WHO, World Health Organization, and UNODC, and is a global master trainer on drug demand reduction for the Columbia Plan and UNODC. He has published more than 250 research papers in peer-reviewed journals on issues related to addictive disorders and mental health. Today, together with him, we journey into gaming and gaming disorder beyond the obvious. As I try to picture it, Dr. Yatan is a worldwide figure in the field, and I'm sure all of us today will learn a lot from him. But before leaving the floor, let me remind you that you can type in your questions during the presentation, and after the presentation, we'll address them in the Q&A session. Dr. Yatan, thank you for being with us today, and now the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's really, I'm really so glad to be here. And before I begin with my presentation, I must congratulate ISSUP Turkey on this very special day in their journey. And with Dr. Rabia's leadership, I'm more than sure that ISSUP Turkey will contribute very actively to this global vibrant community of addiction professionals from across the globe. I have been fortunate to have acquainted with professionals from Turkey over the past couple of years, and I mean, it is one of the most motivated lot of professionals that I've come across in my professional life. So I have no doubts that ISSUP Turkey is going to contribute immensely to the global scene as we go along. I also must thank ISSUP Turkey and ISSUP for this opportunity to be here with you and share my thoughts on this this theme that I think it's quite relevant and very important for the modern times. Today, I'll be talking about gaming disorder and gaming. Now, traditionally, addictions have been synonymous with substance use. That means that you have to consume something in form of a chemical that enters your brain and your body, and then it leads to problems which includes addiction. But addiction professionals over the years have realized that it's not just chemicals that can lead to addiction. There are certain behaviors that can be equally addictive, if not more. And these set of disorders, we do encounter them as part of our clinical work. They are important areas of research, and for academics also, they are very exciting new domains where we can explore so much about addiction. We can learn so much about the etiopathogenesis, the theories behind why these things emerge, and what are the ways we can help people overcome these problems. And of course, since they are part of the subset of addictive disorders, there is a lot of cross-learning that can happen between substance use disorders and addictive behaviors. Now, as the title of my presentation suggests, I'll be talking a bit beyond the obvious in context of games and gaming disorder. Now, by the word obvious, I mean over the past decade or so, we have been talking a lot about addictive behaviors and particularly gaming disorder. And there is a lot of interest. There are studies that are coming up that talk about why people develop these problems, what could be the mechanisms behind this, how we should define gaming disorder and gaming addiction, and what is our approach going ahead that can help people overcome these problems. And all these are very important areas because addictive behaviors are now recognized as important public health problem globally. But what I'm going to talk about in this session is certain themes that, in my opinion, are not talked about as often as we should be talking about in context of gaming and gaming disorder. Because these themes are very important, because these are some very basic concepts that we need to keep in mind when we are working in this area, so that we have a very comprehensive understanding of what gaming is and what gaming disorders are. I'll be taking around 20 minutes to present my slides, and I'll be more than happy to take any questions or comments at the end of my presentation. Now, I mentioned that there is a lot of interest in addictive behaviors, and one of the biggest drivers has been the fact that the most recent edition of ICD, the diagnostic system that WHO has proposed, it has included addictive behaviors under the chapter where it describes disorders due to addictions. And as you can see here, two addictive behaviors have been included in ICD-11, one being gambling disorder and the other being gaming disorder. And it has driven a lot of research, a lot of interest, a lot of focus on these set of conditions. Now, like any other mental health condition, ICD-11 has given specific criteria how we identify gaming disorder. And this is pretty much very similar to any other mental health disorder or mental disorder as is described in ICD-11. There is a set of clinical features that is described there. There is a criteria in terms of duration, that is how long the symptoms should have been there, what kind of problem they should have caused. And this is a very common framework, so to say, that ICD-11 uses to diagnose any mental health disorder. Now, this is very similar to other mental disorders. For example, let's take the case of schizophrenia, which again is a very well-known mental health condition. And ICD-11 describes how we should identify somebody who has schizophrenia. Again, there is a set of clinical features which are given there in ICD-11. And if you meet the threshold, that is the minimum number of symptoms for a minimum duration, you can be diagnosed with this condition. The same is the case of other disorders. For example, binge eating disorder. The criteria has been described. There are specific symptoms and signs, and you need to have a minimum set of signs and symptoms for a minimum duration to be diagnosed. Now, when we talk about gaming disorder, the paradigm is slightly different from other mental health disorders that are there in ICD-11. For example, in context of schizophrenia, the clinical features are listed there in ICD-11, and as a clinician, our job is to identify whether they are present or not. Now, the understanding on schizophrenia has grown over the years, and the criteria have changed. But when we talk of schizophrenia, we know what we are talking about in terms of a mental disorder. And the same is true for other mental disorders as well. For example, in binge eating disorder, ICD-11 describes what is binging, because that's the primary diagnosis there. And a part of the diagnosis, for example, the term eating is quite obvious to us. It doesn't need much explaining. We know what eating means, and that's why we don't debate and discuss what eating should be defined or described as in ICD-11. And actually, it doesn't describe what eating is. We tend to believe that the same might be true for gaming disorder as well, but it is not so simple when it comes to gaming disorder, and I'll try to highlight that as part of the first section of my presentation. Now, what exactly is gaming? Now, as I mentioned earlier, ICD-11 describes what is gaming disorder. That means what is pathological or problematic gaming behavior. But does it actually define what gaming is? Now, if we look at the diagnostic criteria and the description that is given in ICD-11, it does describe what gaming disorder is, and it does talk about gaming behavior, which primarily is digital gaming or video gaming, which may be online or offline, but it does not specifically tell us what is meant by the word gaming here. In fact, if you look at the ICD-11 description, it tells us how we should demarcate it from hazardous gaming, or gambling, or some other mental and behavioral disorders. But typically ICD-11 does not describe what gaming is. And the same is true of DSM as well, which is another very popularly used diagnostic system worldwide. The most recent version of DSM, that is DSM-5, includes internet gaming disorder as a condition for future research and study. It's not there in the main text yet. But again, while it describes what gaming disorder is, it falls short of defining the term gaming. Although it does acknowledge that defining gaming is important, because the type of games or the context in which the term gaming is used can be a very important determinant in terms of the consequences that are because of internet gaming disorder. But DSM-5 also does not tell us very explicitly what it means by the word gaming. Now, that's how the diagnostic systems have gone. They have tried to define gaming disorder, although they have not yet tried to define what gaming means. But what about research? Is research more specific on this? Now, last year we carried out this study where we did a review of the publications that are there in PubMed for gaming disorder. We included the studies which were based on human participants, and these were about gaming disorder or problematic gaming, and they were primarily meta-analysis or systematic review. Now, we use the year 2021 as the cutoff because that's the time when ICD-11 started to be used in research, and we wanted to see, is research specific about the use of term gaming? Now, what we found is that in 80% of the studies that were included in our analysis, the term gaming disorder was defined or described. That is, the article described what it meant by gaming disorder. But the term gaming was described in only 25% of the articles. So what it means is, while these studies, they knew what they meant by gaming disorder, they did not specifically describe and define what gaming meant. And even more importantly, somehow it did not feature as an important concern in the sense that the authors did not comment that in majority of the studies, around 84% of the studies, that the research does not talk about the definition of the word gaming, and nobody even knows what kind of games might have been included in those studies. And very few studies, they recommended that there is a need to have a more precise definition of the term gaming as we go ahead. Now, why is it important? Why does it matter that we know what we mean by the word gaming? In fact, there are many reasons why we need to do so. The first one is research has told us that all games are not equal. What that means is that there are so many different kinds of games that exist around us. There are different genres, there are different means and ways of playing them. There are single person games, there are multiplayer games, and research has told us that they are not all equal. For example, it has been seen in research that gaming characteristics, for example, whether it is a single player or a multiplayer, it's an online or an offline, it's a battle game or an arcade game, these characteristics are important mediators of the association of gaming with the outcomes. What that means is that depending on what kind of game you play, the possible negative outcomes can vary. And in fact, people who experience problematic gaming, they differ from those people who play games, but they don't end up having problematic gaming in terms of the kind of games they play. And this is a very consistent finding in different studies. Also, research tells us that certain genres of game, as well as specific games, are more popular among those people who tend to have problematic gaming and gaming disorder. The severity of gaming disorder symptoms is higher amongst people who play certain genres of games, particularly the multiplayer online real-time games. And these characteristics of the games would be very important mediators between gaming behavior and certain other outcomes, including self-harm and suicidality. So what it means is that each game is not same when it comes to the possibility of problematic outcome, and not just the outcome because of gaming, but certain other behaviors, for example, self-harm in context of gaming. So it matters a lot that we know what the term gaming specifically means. But what happens in research is when you read any article, for example, when you access any systematic review or meta-analysis that talks about how do we treat gaming disorder, typically these studies don't tell us what kind of games are they talking about. They will just summarize and analyze the findings of all the research that meets their inclusion and exclusion criteria. And what it tells us is that for gaming disorder, this is what works and this is what doesn't work. They don't go into the specifics that by gaming disorder, what kind of games are included, whether this intervention is specific for a particular kind or a genre of game, or it can work for all kind of games. And this is one practical challenge that we experience in clinical settings, because different people who play different kind of games can end up having different set of problems, but we don't have evidence that which intervention works for which kind of gaming disorder, for which kind of game that people are playing. So that's one reason why it's important to know what gaming means. The second reason we need to be very clear what gaming means is that there is lack of clarity on what exactly gaming is. Typically, people believe that gaming is playing a game. That is, you are an individual who is actively playing the game. But research again tells us that gaming behavior goes way beyond playing the game directly. For example, it has been shown that gaming is a much more complex behavior rather than simply playing a game on a mobile phone or on a console or on a computer. It actually goes beyond actually playing the game. And one of the most commonly used term in this context is what is called as observers. Now, typically, these are the people who frequently watch esport events, and they spend a lot of time watching others play. But their own game play or the time they spend playing games is not as high as compared to people who have problematic gaming. But since these people are spending a lot of time in that environment where they are watching the games, and one of the intentions is that they want to improve their own gameplay, so does that mean that even observers should be considered as a kind of a gamer? And in fact, research, there are people who have kind of recommended that yes, they should also be treated as another set of gamers only. And I commented on this in one of the publications recently, where I discussed that why we need to define gaming behavior more precisely, whether we include only the people who actively play games or it includes people who are game watchers and players as well. So that is the second reason why we need to be very clear on what we mean by this concept of gaming per se. The third reason that makes me recommend that we need to focus more precisely on the meaning of the word gaming is because some games may not even be games, and that means that they may not qualify the definition of a game, but they may be treated as games and maybe included in research or in clinical settings as a game. And this is centered around this concept of skill versus chance element. Now, this is a very common parameter that people use to differentiate between gaming and gambling. So typically, gambling is the word that people use for those activities where the element of chance is more than the element of skill. And gaming typically refers to those activities where element of skill is greater than the element of chance. So typically, you are engaging in a behavior online or offline, over a mobile phone or over a computer or a console. And depending on the ratio between the skill and chance, this could be gaming or gambling. Now, that's not the concern that I'm trying to express here. The concern that I'm trying to highlight is this: who actually determines what is the element of skill or a chance in a particular behavior or a particular activity? Who actually is the authority who does so? And typically, it is the law of the land. In different countries, in different jurisdictions, different activities are classified as game or gambling by the law of the land, and that legal framework tells us whether we should consider that activity as a game or as a gambling activity. Now, what it means is that depending on whether a particular activity is classified as a game or a gambling activity, the diagnosis changes. So the same person who is playing the same so-called game in one jurisdiction will be diagnosed with gaming disorder, while the same person in another jurisdiction where that activity is classified as gambling will be diagnosed as gambling disorder. And this again is a very strange situation in context of mental disorders. I can't think of any other scenario where a mental health condition or any addictive disorders, the choice of the diagnosis is defined by the law of the land or the legal framework. Because mental health professionals or people who are diagnosing, they are in no position to define and describe whether it is gaming or gambling. And this is a very unique scenario in that context. And finally, the reason why we need to be very precise with the use of the word gaming is this concept of gamification of gambling and gamification of gaming. Now, what it means is that gaming and gambling may not be absolute concepts. Gambling, many activities which are classified as gambling, they include elements of gaming to make them more interesting, to make them more attractive. Similarly, there are many gaming activities where elements of gambling are incorporated by design to make it more interesting and more lucrative for people to engage in these activities. So what that means is, an example is a loot box, which typically is a virtual item which you win during a play, and you can redeem it for some kind of a rewards. And research has told us that people who pay to win in those kind of gameplay systems, if you use real money, you are more likely to win the loot boxes. And in fact, loot boxes are classified and regulated under the gambling laws in some countries. So there may be certain games which include these elements which are similar to gambling. So this game may not actually be game, it may be a combination of gaming and gambling. And that makes us think that this demarcation between gaming and gambling may not be as straightforward. It may not be a concept where we have two categories, one of gaming and one of gambling. Rather, it may be more complex than that. So there are some activities which are purely gaming, and then there are some activities which are purely gambling, and in between there are games with elements of gambling, and there is gambling with elements of gaming. But rather than being in these compartments, I personally think that it's more on a continuum. Most of the activities and behaviors that we see today, they all have at least some element of gaming and gambling. So what it means is that when we encounter somebody who tells us that I am playing a game, we need to look more deeply into what exactly they are engaging in. And more often than not, we will realize that this is not just game. There might be an element of gambling that is involved in it. So these are some of the reasons why that word gaming is so critical for us to know about and talk about, because a lot of discussion happens about what gaming disorder is, how we should diagnose it, what is a better way of defining and identifying it. And at the same time, we don't talk about gaming in itself very often. So that's the reason why I think we need to be talking much more about what gaming is, and we need to define it much more precisely. Now, coming to the last part of my presentation, the second less obvious focus that research and even academics and clinicians have is that since addictive behaviors have become so interesting, such a great focus of interest for so many of us, people have started to focus very extensively on the pathology part of it. And we tend to forget that if you look at the literature from across the world, in almost all the studies, the people who have problematic or pathological gaming is actually a very smaller fraction of people who engage in gaming behavior per se. And we also tend to forget that gaming has a very positive side to it, and many people might end up benefiting from gaming rather than just experiencing negative consequences. Now, I won't talk about those benefits of gaming, but I will restrict myself to a very specific concept that is used from the health perspective, and that is the concept of gamification in serious games. Now, the term gamification refers to addition of elements of games to non-game contexts. For example, you design an intervention to help somebody overcome their social anxiety. Now, the therapy will be designed in a way which is aimed at helping people overcome their social anxiety. But in order to make it more interesting and more acceptable, you can include elements of gaming in it so that the interface becomes more interesting, so that the end user finds it more engaging. That is called gamification of that therapy. Similarly, there is this concept of serious games where people use gaming as the key central concept, and they use it to help people enhance their cognitive skills, hand-eye coordination, concentration, memory, and things like that. And there are interventions and trials that exist which talk about the benefits of these approaches, that is gamification and serious games. This is just one of the reference that I have highlighted here. People have used these techniques to improve the outcomes in terms of mental health interventions, and there are some studies where people have talked about its use in treatment of substance use disorders as well. So while we should be concerned about gaming disorder, at the same time we should also realize that there is a positive side to this discussion and debate as well, and we must look at the whole picture and not just focus on the negative elements or the problems that gaming brings along with it. So finally, to sum up what I wanted to discuss and share with you today is that yes, gaming disorder is a very important public health concern. It shares many similarities with substance use disorders, although it's not similar to that. And if we learn more about gaming disorder, it will help us in our practice when we work with people who have substance use disorders as well, because there may be a lot of overlap, and that is something that we need to focus on. But besides and beyond that, we need to talk and know a lot more about games as well. A very simple basic thing, knowing what game actually means. Is it just a game, or it's gambling, or it's a combination of both? Because when it comes to conceptualizing the case or helping these people overcome the problematic behavior, it makes a big difference whether we are interacting with somebody who is engaged in gaming or gambling or a combination. And we need to be more precise with the choice of the term games in that sense. We also need to be aware of the concept of gambling in this context, and we need to start thinking whether that skill versus chance is the best paradigm to demarcate the two, because every activity, almost every activity, will have an element of chance, and there may be some element of skill as well. So how do we decide whether it is 51% skill or 51% chance, and do we need to look beyond that in order to demarcate between games and gambling? We should also start talking about gamification and gamification, because when we talk of regulatory framework, and a particular activity may be approved as a gaming activity in a jurisdiction, while it may include multiple elements of gambling, and the reverse is also true. So we need to look at, when we are conducting research in this area, from this perspective as well, that whether we are talking about two absolute constructs in terms of gaming and gambling, or it's on a continuum where most of the activities have at least some element of both these concepts. And we also need to talk and discuss a lot about serious games, because these are the games that we can use therapeutically. These are the games that we can use help people who have substance use disorders and co-occurring conditions, and they can be a great therapeutic advantage when we are working with people who have substance use disorders and addictions. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much, and if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to take them. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Yatan. It was a really nice presentation, and you put the situation, I think, in thoroughly. and brought up new questions for the attendees. I'm checking the questions pane at the moment. There are a lot of kind wishes and thanking you and other speakers for the event. Let me just briefly. There are some remarks. For example, there's one from Nirmala Jagulala. They're saying that gambling is actually when you place bets on the outcome. What do you think about it in terms of the definition of gambling?
Yep, I agree. That's another way of kind of describing gambling, wagering on something, putting something of value with the hope that you will gain something out of it. But these days, people have devised certain games which includes that element as well. So what it means is that there may be a fee to participate in the game, and then there's a reward at the end of it. And this reward may be significantly larger than the amount that you're putting in. So that again is a gray zone in many ways. And typically people tend to think and believe that if money is involved, it's likely to be gambling. But if money is involved, it may equally be gaming as well. So that's the point I'm trying to highlight. I totally agree that putting money, wagering money is a very important characteristic of gambling, but that can be an element of a game as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, talking about the gray zones, I actually had this question on my mind. You mentioned about the gray zones between gaming and gambling, but that brought the idea of augmented reality to my mind, which is a gray zone between reality and the digital area. So what do you think about how AR would affect gaming or gambling trends in the future, and how it will affect and in terms of clinical aspect?
I think it's already playing a very big role. I mean, because when people engage in these activities, there is a lot of data that they generate, which the developers are using techniques of AI, and they're trying to kind of analyze what makes people engage with that activity longer, what motivates people to put in more money to participate in that, what makes it more lucrative for them. So all those algorithms are at play. So when people are putting in that money, they should also remember that they're putting in their time as well as they're sharing their data as well, which the platform is always analyzing and coming up with better algorithms to make it more interesting for you, make it more lucrative for you, and engage you for longer duration. So it's going to play a very significant role, and as we go ahead, it's going to play an even greater role, and we might find people are able to customize a single game for different players depending on what interests them the most, and it may present different iterations of the same game or gambling to different players depending on what fits best to their needs and what excites them the most. Yeah.
Thank you. We have another question. What interventions are effective in addressing both gaming disorder and comorbid mental health conditions simultaneously? Actually, the first thing that comes to my mind is ADHD, to be honest. But I'm really curious to hear your opinions.
See, when it comes to the comorbidity or co-occurring conditions, we don't have very robust data yet, and there are studies, but they are not of very good quality, so to say. But yes, there are studies that tell us that people who have co-occurring disorders and who have gaming as well, gaming addiction as well, the best approach is to target both the problems simultaneously. At this point in time, we don't have trials where people have compared people who have an existing psychiatric disorders and comorbid gaming disorder and try to see which is the best intervention. But for gaming disorders, there are different non-pharmacological or psychosocial interventions that people have found to be effective. There are trials of certain medications as well that have been found to have some effectiveness. But typically, it's always a combination that is recommended. And when people have these comorbid conditions, the focus should be to identify the underlying disorder. Because what we have seen in our experience is that many times the gaming behavior is influenced a lot by the underlying mental health problem. For example, people who have ADHD, gaming becomes an activity which interests them in many cases. And since it's able to keep them engaged for a longer time, they tend to overdo it. Similarly, people who have social anxiety, they may not be comfortable interacting with people in face-to-face situations, and they may prefer playing games online with their friends. So it's very critical to identify the co-occurring condition, and then we should target both these conditions, and that probably will have the best outcome.
There's actually a question that may be considered linked to the previous one. Could you please elaborate more about the pharmacological agents in gaming treatment, gaming disorder treatment, and is the use of mood stabilizers beneficial? What do you think about this?
So, see, the way I would like to respond to this question is that we still don't have the final answers. There are trials where people have used opioid antagonists, some antidepressants, some mood stabilizers as well. And these studies, some of them have found that, yes, these are effective. But typically, many of these studies, they are not very well designed in the sense that they have not targeted the gaming behavior per se. The person might have an underlying psychiatric problem which improves, and consequently the gaming behavior also improves. So the recommendations are not very clear in terms of what is the first line medication at this point in time. But opioid antagonists, antidepressants, and mood stabilizers, and even some antipsychotics have been tried, and in some trials they have been found to be effective.
Thank you. And there's another question for you, Dr. Yatan, regarding the loot box systems in video games, actually. The question starts with a statement that it's my understanding that game developers have collaborated with casino companies to design mechanisms similar to slot machines. However, unlike slot machines, which are targeted at adults, games like FIFA, which aggressively promote their loot box systems, are marketed to individuals as young as 3 years old. This approach seems to potentially expose a much younger audience to gambling-like elements, possibly fostering the development of pathological gambling behaviors among them. What are your thoughts on this aspect? And the asker also delivered their congratulations to everyone on this launch event.
Okay. So I completely agree, as I mentioned in my presentation as well. A particular activity may be defined and described as a game, as an overall activity, but there may be elements of gambling, and loot boxes are a very popular way of doing it, a very common way of doing it. And yes, what that means is that if we are not very precise with the choice of the term or the use of the word gaming, we might be exposing people at a very young age to elements of gambling. And that is the concern there, because it depends on how rigorous the regulatory framework is. The people who are deciding whether this activity should be labeled as gaming or gambling, how they take a call. For example, you have very well described a good example of a very popular game, but it may include elements of gambling. And when people are exposed to them at a very young age, it starts creating those behavioral patterns in their system, which eventually may predispose them to engaging in only those elements, and they then start moving away from gaming and they start moving closer to gambling. So yes, they are being exposed at a very young age, and that's another very important reason why we need to be very precise what we classify as a game and what is gambling. That's very critical.
Thank you. And there's actually one question. They are asking, where would we find the best information or research on gaming disorder? I'm sure there are many resources out there, but which ones are your favorites?
So I would recommend that the best approach in the shortest time that we can do is identify a systematic review or a meta-analysis. A recent one, which has kind of summarized the findings of the most relevant and most well-designed studies over the past few years. So any good journal which is indexed has a reasonably good impact factor. Try to find a systematic review or a meta-analysis. PubMed is one of the sources that you can use where people publish a lot of, where people index a lot of journals, and that can be a good resource that people can access. In terms of a standardized textbook, I probably won't recommend any as of yet, because the same reason that this science is evolving very fast and we still don't have very conclusive recommendations. So most recent academic journal articles is probably the way to go, in my opinion, if you want to have the most recent evidence on this.
Thank you. And there's one idea, gaming after school clubs. What do you feel on having them for age 8 to 12 years olds in schools with a pedagogic program about gaming, positives and negatives about gaming, boundaries, motivation for gaming, etc., to promote healthy gaming? Seems like an interesting idea. What do you think about it?
Yeah, as I very briefly mentioned in my presentation, gaming has many potential advantages. It's the gaming disorder is the problem part of it, but there is so much positive that many people can have. It's a great means to learn. It's a great means to connect. It's a great means to communicate. It's a very good recreational activity, and there are educational programs that are centered around gaming. So that again is the message that I want to convey, that it's not the gaming that is the problem. It's that interaction of gaming with human being that potentially can create a problem. So when people use that paradigm with an aim to improve things, to help children learn something, it's a very good move, in my opinion. But at the same time, we should be very clear that what should be the focus of that game, how much should it be part of the overall pedagogic technique, what else the children should be doing besides engaging in gaming, and what is it that they should not be exposed to. I mean, for example, there should not be any elements of gambling included. So if we make a very conscious decision and we are very precise in what we are catering to children and adolescents at that age, these techniques can be a great tool in learning new things for them, and we must use them, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you say we should specify what gaming is, not only in gaming disorders, but also in gaming after school clubs as well.
Yeah, you see, that is the main concern now, because people who have gaming disorder, they eventually end up being with a professional. But people who don't have a disorder, they are still exposed to something which may not actually be gaming. So that is the bigger concern, that whether people are gaming or gambling or a combination of both or something else. So that is something that we need to talk about, because the way games are getting popular, it's an activity that many people who are growing up these days will engage in as part of their growing years. And since a large chunk of our population is going to be exposed to them, it's very crucial that we know what this word means so that we can take informed decisions.
Well, there are lots of questions and comments. So for using the time more effective, I think we can take last two questions. So there is one. So it starts with a thank you note again. And the question is, what would you suggest in terms of pharmacological treatment intervention when the patient is on aripiprazole and struggle with gaming or gambling disorders? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think we need more information than what we have, because when it comes to pharmacotherapy, there are so many other variables that come into play. The side effect profile, the age of the person, comorbid conditions that they are having, the expectancy, whether it is the treatment for the underlying psychiatric problem or only the gaming behavior. So I think we first need to evaluate the person more comprehensively, because before we can recommend a particular line of medication. But again, as I mentioned, we have now meta-analysis and systematic review that comment on effectiveness of different pharmacological interventions. So that may be the resource that we can access, but before that we need to be more thorough with our assessment of this person who we are talking about.
Thank you. And for the last question, maybe, from your research findings, what type of games were found to cause more gaming disorders, and what demographics are most affected in terms of age, sex, socioeconomic status, etc.?
Okay, so we run a clinic called Behavioral Addictions Clinic at our institute, and the profile that we get our clinic, the most common age that we see in our clinic is somewhere from 14 years to around 18 years of age. Males are much more common. We get more males than females, but that may also be a reflection on the help-seeking behavior, because this is what we are getting in our clinic and not exactly in the community that I'm talking about. But what we see most often are adolescents, males. The games that they play, again, there is a wide variation, but the most common that we tend to see are multiplayer real-time online games that are most interesting to the kind of patients that we see in our clinic. But when we work with students in colleges and schools, we encounter people who play all kind of games. Some of the games which are not very popular are also engaged in a problematic manner. But if you ask me one single kind of game, it probably will be multiplayer real-time online game, and games which are focused around the war themes, where you become a part of a team and you fight another team. So those kind of are the games which are the commonest that we encounter in our setting.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Yatan. In the beginning of the meeting, I tried to describe ISSUP as briefly as possible, but mentioned the areas, the work the ISSUP does in prevention, definition or defining diseases or disorders, and trying to treat them. And the Q&A session also, I think it was a good picture of this definition. There were questions for prevention, defining definitions, and treatments. Well, thank you again for patiently answering and letting us learn new stuff from you. It was a real pleasure to have you with us on this important day.
Thank you.
So thank you everyone for joining us. This concludes our webinar after the Q&A session. Thank you all for attending and sharing our excitement today. We hope you all learned something new and enjoyed the presentations. You'll actually receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. We always appreciate your feedback and suggestions. Please use the link in the follow-up email to fill out the feedback survey. On behalf of the ISSUP Türkiye National Chapter and our presenters, thank you once again for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.